In this episode, I want to share with you the time that I had a spiritual attachment. It was my first and my last. I learned a lot. It was very unusual, but the experience helped me to understand how to help others in this crossing over work. In this episode, I want to talk about the attachment that I had very early on when I was starting to do this work. Believe me, I'm going to leave you with a tool that's going to help you so you don't make the same mistake that I made and so you can protect your energetic space moving forward. But I want to share this one with you because it was a huge learning lesson for me and I learned a lot out of it. And I'm hoping that I can relay some of that to you moving forward as well. Now, attachments are, in essence, when the energy of a spirit who is stuck attaches to the energy of a living person. Now, to go into this deeper, I would advise looking into the crossing over course if you're working with people that are doing attachments or clearing spirits that are connected to other people or connected to houses in any way, shape, or form. It's very helpful to take that course to understand all of the reasons. There's so many reasons why attachments happen, and there's a lot of reasons why a spirit would attach and how to go ahead and move forward in helping with that as well. But for this episode, I just want to tell you about my experience with it. I walked through some fear. I pushed through it, but I also learned how a living person can be affected energetically, emotionally, behaviorally. I mean, it was really quite the intense experience for me. Now, this was early on. It was, I would say, maybe a year into opening up. I had met a really wonderful man named Joseph, and he was helping me become established as a professional medium. I didn't know the steps that I needed to take. I really kind of barely knew what I was doing. I was not yet doing crossing over work. I was just trying to explore the fact that I was talking to the deceased. I was starting to do sessions for friends and then friends of friends and friends of friends. And so that's where Joseph stepped in and said, let me help you, establish like a website and let's talk about getting an office and what does it look like to be a professional. I was so out of my realm and out of my league. It was very, very helpful. Now, I had established a friendship with him and I had visited his house a few times, and he had this amazing dog, big, huge, gorgeous dog that adored me. And I absolutely adored the dogs. Every time I came over there, I got to pet him and I got to play with him. It was wonderful. Fast forward to one particular afternoon, I was heading over to his house with some documents so he could see, like, this is my plan, this is what I'm thinking about doing, et cetera, et cetera. Because I was kind of trying to plan out how to step out into the world with mediumship. And before I went to his house, I thought, oh, I've heard that people go to graveyards and I've heard that they do photography and that you can catch a ghost on a camera. I didn't know a lot back then. That's okay. So I was all excited. I had watched this show. It was my first time watching like a paranormal hunting kind of show. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go do this. So I went to a local graveyard. I know if you're listening to this and you do crossing over work or you work with spirits in the in-between, go ahead and roll your eyes at me. But I was brand newbie. Okay. Went to a graveyard, took a bunch of pictures with my camera. This was so long ago that I actually brought a camera, like an actual camera. I think it had film in it. That's how long ago this was. And I was like, I'm ghost hunting and I'm going to catch a ghost on a camera. And, I took a few more pictures after I left there. And then I jumped in my car and I headed over to Joseph's. And I was going to go there to sit down and talk about, what the next steps were that I needed to take. So I walk in and his dog, who previously adored me, stopped, like hunched down, just got that mohawk spike of hair down his back, started to snarl and growl at me like he was going to rip out my throat. Now, this is interesting because that's not that dog. That dog is one of the sweetest, most gentle dogs I've ever met. And this was agreed. I mean, Joseph said the same thing. He's like, this is strange. Joseph turned and looked at me. He's very energetically in tune. He turned and looked at me. He said, I think you might have an attachment. Now, This is the first time I've heard the word attachment. Again, brand newbie, not even really doing crossing over work here, but this was the first time I had an attachment or even knew what one was. And I said, "What is that?" And when he explained it to me, I went, "Okay, I'm in a horror movie. This is terrifying." Because all the bad thoughts went through my head. All the scenes that I'd ever seen on the big screen, like, and I was super scared. He said, "That's okay. Don't worry. I have an acupuncturist. He can help you. Let's call him and see what he can do." We called him and he said that he could, help me out with this and come on over to the office. I was so grateful, so grateful. But before we set up this appointment with the acupuncturist, I had a few more moments that really helped me to understand the depths of what an attachment does. I was at Joseph's. Beautiful sweetheart of a dog was growling and snarling at me. Joseph figured this out and went, "I think this might be what you're dealing with. Okay, I'm gonna deal with this." And he says, "But do you also have your paperwork? You can leave it here." I said, "I don't have my paperwork. I'll run home. It's only a mile away, or 2 miles away. I'll run home, get the paperwork, and come back." I left, jumped in my car with the intention of heading to my house to get the paperwork. And I'm driving down the road and I see someone walking down the road and they're wearing a jacket. It was like a neon pink jacket or was some sort of unusual color that kind of stood out. And I heard myself yell in the car at this person, something ridiculous. "You look ridiculous." It was some judgmental yell. I'm in my car and I just judgmentally by myself alone barked out at this stranger who was walking down the street smiling, having a great day. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. That was not my MO. And I was driving, and my first reaction to what happened, like what I just did, what came out of my mouth was, "Where'd that come from? That's not me." Like I don't yell at strangers for wearing a particular coat. Like none of this is making sense to me. All right. I drive another half mile, I get to my house and I park on the street. And I get out of my car and I walk up to my house. Now I've lived in this home for at least a year or two. And I walk up and I'm walking in the front door and everything in me feels like I'm breaking into someone's house. It was the most bizarre experience. I can't put a ton of words to it because it was so unusual. I'm like, I know this is my house, but I feel like I'm breaking into my own home. This feels really odd. I went in, I got the paperwork. I was angry. I was frustrated. I shut the door. I left. I went back to Joseph's house. And again, we weren't going to hang out because the dog was having none of it with me. And all I wanted to do was get to this acupuncturist to get help from this, what my brain was telling me was a horror movie. It wasn't. I was okay. But I dropped off the paperwork and then went to the acupuncturist. He was great. He worked with me. He said, "Oh, yeah, yep, you got someone hanging on." I was like, "Not okay. Get it off me. Get it off me. Get it off me. Get it off me." And I couldn't see the spirit that was attached. That was, I think, the thing that was upsetting me the most was that I was just opening up to being able to see spirits and being able to communicate with people on the other side. I had seen not a lot of people stuck in the in-between. And now here one is attached to me. It was very unnerving. The acupuncturist did a treatment with me. He said, "You're all clear. You're all balanced. I want you to start doing a few things." And he started talking about grounding and anchoring. And that's when it all kind of fell into place. Because at the same time, my guide had been teaching me GCP. And I was like, oh, this is all happening at the same time for a reason. Now, here are my takeaways from this. And then I'm going to tell you, what to do and how to work with people. But my takeaways from this is that when an attachment happens, your energy, which is like a cloud, the spirit who's stuck energy, which is like a cloud, those two clouds kind of overlap. Think of it that way. And you'll start to have feelings, emotions, reactions that match the spirit, not necessarily you. So if you run into a spirit that's stuck in the in-between, let's say they're angry and they don't like the color green, then if they're going to attach to you, you're going to start to feel weird, bizarre feelings of not liking the color green. It's an odd thing. It's very subtle. It's very subtle, but it affects people in different ways. And I've met people who have responded to this in positive ways when I've said, okay, you have an attachment, you're coming to me to get some help. And have you been feeling this way? Have you had emotions that you don't feel like are yours? Have you been reacting in ways that you don't normally react? And almost every time they say, yeah, thank you for putting words to it, I couldn't explain it. That's what this is. That's the feeling of having an attachment. So taken care of, acupuncturist, you know, disconnected the attachment from me, crossed over that spirit, worked with him. I was able to return back to Joseph's. The dog gave me kisses and hugs and loves and cuddled with me, and everything was good again. I haven't had an attachment like that since, because of GCP. And so I'm going to go ahead and put a link in here so you can access GCP. I have a free video that I've made with instructions on how to do it. But in essence, it's ground, clear, protect. And it's a statement of intention that your energetic space is sacred, and that you're not up for attachments. You're just not up for that game. You don't want to play it. You don't need it. You understand it. And that's that. That's what GCP can help you do. For me, I was so new, and I was just jumping in there, and I didn't have any grounding or practice or anything that really anchored me or helped me to understand things. And the more I understood, the more I learned, the stronger I was. And like I said, I haven't had an attachment since, but I have been able to understand the people that I have worked with that have had attachments or that have attachments, and I am helping them detach from that and crossing the spirit over so they're no longer affecting the living person. It was an interesting experience. It was really interesting. It's the only time I can say in my life that I have felt like my brain behaved like someone else's. And it's not that you completely behave like the other person. It's almost like you have an echo or a whisper of an emotion that you wouldn't normally have, or a reaction that you wouldn't normally have. It's not dominant. It's definitely an echo. And when you say it to someone who's experiencing this, they go, that's it. You just pinpointed it. I was having a hard time pinpointing it. When you clear the attachment, it helps the person to be able to get back into their centered space and anchored back in and function in their day-to-day life. Not to mention, it helps all the people around them as well. It clears out. I mean, GCP at its core is ground, clear, protect. It's a way of taking care of your energetic body. And if you come across somebody, if you're doing this work, if you're helping people to balance, to be able to help disconnect that attachment and then help that spirit to cross over, is going to help the living person to regain their space, to remove that echo, to remove that kind of second guessing feeling, that subtle emotion that isn't normally how they would react, and get them balanced and centered again. Remember though, it's really important. If you come across somebody and you're working with them and you're able to work with them to help detach that attachment and to disconnect it, please remember to also take time to help the spirit that you've disconnected from that living person, because they need help too. Because in the end, ghosts are people too.
This podcast is brought to you by the SAGE Method, the most comprehensive and down-to-earth intuitive development training available. Is this your year? Is it finally your time to increase your intuition, bring in more abundance, and experience the bliss you deserve? If yes, then join thousands of students across the world for a 7-week journey to uncover your natural, beautiful, and strong intuition. Visit us at thesagemethod.com for more information.